Welcome to the dark side of therapy. And tonight I'm really excited because my good friend Shane Faber is with me, and he's pretty much a relative at this point. I mean, I've known this guy for like 15 years, and he is transgender. And I have long wanted to talk about transgender issues as they relate to mental health. And, you know, Shane and I get together, we watch horror movies. We don't talk about this stuff, but I thought if I'm going to talk about it, I want to find a safe person. And that's why Shane is here tonight. So it's an honor to have you here to educate me, to teach me some things I don't know. And I just want to say thank you from the bottom of my heart for coming on and doing this.
Absolutely, not a problem. Pleasure of mine. Pleasure all mine.
So Shane, I want to start with if a person is going to go the transgender route, is it mandated that they get mental health therapy, or is that kind of old school thinking?
You know, I've been kind of asking these questions to some of my friends because I started transitioning 4 or 5 years ago. It was like right after this, the first fall I had in college, which would have been 2017.
Okay.
And I feel like there's a lot more loopholes that I was going through, and of course, it depends on the state you're in, for sure, and
Okay.
even nationally or internationally. Um, I know I had to, in order to get hormone replacement therapy as well as surgery, they wanted somebody to assess me to see where I was at mentally, and I think it's like they were looking for other mental illnesses that could be like in place of or causing the dysphoria. But mainly it was for like insurance companies in order to cover the medication you would be going on. You need to be diagnosed with gender dysphoria. Um,
Okay.
that's what I remember because that was feels like a long time ago
It's
for
a yeah,
me.
it's an ice age, right?
I remember I came back to Bemidji after I had gotten hormones, but I had to go to like a specialized clinic for it. And I had already been going to counseling that was provided by the college I went to. So
Okay.
that was very helpful. They wrote me letters, so on and so forth. But then when I came to Bemidji after I graduated, I wanted to get top surgery. So I was like, so how do I go through that? All overall, the whole process took me about a year. Most of it was fighting with the insurance companies, but I knew
Wow.
for sure I needed to get therapy, and that was honestly why I started therapy again here. Um, and the one I started with had no experience that I know of when I started with her, so it was kind of scary. I was like, "This is going to be interesting."
Okay, so
um,
I want to ask you about that. So you said it was scary that she didn't have the experience.
yeah, I the fear part of it was mostly was she going to be able to even help me, and
Mm.
because I knew as far as I knew she didn't have any information. Like before, I had wanted to seek out a specialized person in this category because I
Right.
know there are ones out there, but there weren't very many, and most of them you had to do like online. Um, and I didn't know how difficult that was going to be, especially when it comes to insurance companies. They're very specific about how you receive your mental health care. So that was a little scary, and I was very anxious to get the process going because I had heard, all kinds of stories about how long it took to get to surgery. Like people, I had seen people struggle for 3 to 5 years to get it, or 1 to 2. Some people took 6 months. Like it's kind of all over the
Wow.
place. Um, and
So
of course,
yeah, go ahead.
opening up to somebody that in Bemidji like that, a mental health professional that I didn't have any experience was a little frightening just because I had no idea what was going to happen and how she was going to receive me.
I wonder, and you and I talked about this. You don't speak for every transgender person, but in your estimation, would you say that's a fear of a lot of transgender people when they go to a therapist, and that therapist may not be prepared or enlightened?
Yeah, I mean, I've talked to one of my good friends who was similar path as me, and they were saying they weren't as afraid because they had kind of sought them out for queer stuff originally, and they knew they had a little bit of experience. But they said absolutely, if I knew they didn't have any experience, and it was in a in that spot, they were afraid about how they would receive them or
Wow.
just judgment, I guess, in general, or like would they even be able to help them? Um, and I mean, I've had weird biases where people go to therapy and what do you call it?
It's okay. I forget stuff all the time. So
Anyway, yeah, it's basically if he hadn't been looking for a specific one, it was a fear of his for sure. Um, yeah.
is is it is it getting better? Do you think with therapists being more informed, or not in your estimation?
As far as I know, I think it's gotten better because
Hmm.
I've the friends I've had recently that like were transitioning, going through a similar process I was 4 years ago, did it within the last 2 years, and it seemed like they got to things more easily. And it like they were able to find that better access to therapists who had previous experience or knowledge. One thing I did know is the person they did see they didn't know of any training
Mm.
like in the world of mental health professionals that they had gotten like for this category. I would say um, that was kind of important for me to ask them because I wanted to know if like are there specialized conferences or
Right.
trainings that people have to travel to and attend or even want to, because I know it's not always mandatory. When my parents went to go to trainings, they didn't have to, but it was definitely helpful. It's almost like certifying your, um, I guess, information.
Absolutely, and I think in terms of what you're saying, yeah, we don't get enough training, and we don't have enough of that perpetuated, and we sort of need to. And we have all these other terms, trauma informed. Oh goodness, I can go on and on with that. But let's be
Right.
informed about people that are transitioning. Even if you don't believe in it, whatever. How can I be informed about this process? I think that would be so beneficial because I think most therapists probably don't have a clue, Shane, about what this even is, and um, and that's why you're here tonight, because again, I find the only way to make a good decision is to be educated about it. And that's really, again, the goal here is we need to be educated. Now, me personally, it sounds like a difficult journey. I can't even imagine. Um, the same with somebody that's been traumatized, in a different way maybe. But again, I think every journey is very unique, and we need to understand it at least the best we can. And that's again why we have people like you to kind of help us. What does this journey look like? Where are the difficulties? And yeah, so thank you again for educating me just in that little bit you talked about. Um,
Yeah, I
yeah.
mean, I've done thing I like put together packets after a couple of years of gaining all the knowledge I did because I wanted to help people. I wanted to specifically help um, providers as well as the people going through the transitions. Like even around here in my area, it seems very like there is a community, but they're kind of like shadowed. And I
Mm.
mean, I think the only reason I ever find any of them is because I am one of them and we kind of just are, we're drawn to each other. Um, but it definitely, there's some, ad, ad, not as accepting, I guess, around here. And I think there's less resources, of course. It's a more rural area of northern Minnesota. And luckily, though, I will say, living in this state, um, at least the current governor has put on a safety for the queer community, especially for transitioning and any of that kind of affirming care,
Okay.
which I'm very grateful for. So,
Absolutely.
little locations versus large locations make a big difference for wherever you are, and it can definitely be you'll have different obstacles. And I think a part of me was very lucky to be in Minnesota, especially when I started this. Even though where I
Absolutely.
really started was even more rural than Bemidji, it was all the way up in Ely, Minnesota, and that's even more north and more I guess just more ignorant in my opinion
Well,
up
and
there. So I was
no, absolutely. And I think we can make the argument that the bigger the place you're in, probably the easier it is to find a niche or folks that you can relate to. So
right.
yeah, you live in a very small town. You live in a town that is not real diverse if you kind of break it down. And so yet
Yeah.
you found a way to exist there, which is really impressive.
Yeah, there are little pockets here and there, I think, and I think it has grown more accepting over the last couple of years that I've lived here. Anyway, I do see more openly queer people, or have met more openly queer people. Obviously, you can't assume anything, but
Right, right, right.
like we even have our own events for Pride. I've seen that, and yeah, I think it's become more apparent, and people have been able to come out more, which is great, and I hope it continues. And I do think it's a little better in the mental health community. The only thing, I can't say that a whole lot without interviewing a bunch of people because I've been with the same two therapists for the last
Yep,
2.5 years,
yep,
but
yep, yep, yep.
I will say that me being their client, I think I have been able to help them, and I think they have seen other queer clients as well, which I think is good.
So,
um,
so you're saying you're helping the therapist again get educated.
I've had a couple that had no experience at all, and it was like a completely like new area for them, but it was well received, and I was very grateful for that. And I definitely wouldn't be here without them.
That's great.
They, yeah, happened to be in I guess the accepting part of part of them that helped me out for sure. And they did like a lot of work for me, writing up letters or just even talking me through things or just do whatever they could to help me. And that's the same for my friend that I kind of interviewed. He She did a lot more research after he started questioning his gender while they were um, having sessions, and I think it helped her out as well.
That's
Um,
great.
yeah, yeah, it was really cool. And I was gonna say it kind of left me, but
Okay, it'll come back to you. So this show is really about educating new clinicians, Shane, and the graduates that just are getting into the field. We want to give them the most tools we can. What shouldn't a therapist do with somebody that's transgender that comes to see them? What's like the thing that a therapist should not do, in your opinion?
it's a good question.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think back all the way back to when I first started.
I'm sorry to
Um,
tax your memory tonight.
no, 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 it's probably good for me. Um, I think when I first started, I was really lost. Like I had, like it kind of came out of nowhere. I was really depressed the summer of, and I couldn't figure out why. I had no idea why. And then during the fall, I think I just started looking things up online. Like I looked up like YouTubers or any kind of social media influencers that were either queer or open to it or had some kind of answer for me. And then I went to the counselor there, and she actually did a human sexuality class as well as other like more, I guess, I think they had like a women's history. Like it was a lot more, I guess, liberal, open classes that she would do. But she was the
Okay.
counselor that year. She had switched. I went to her, and I don't have a whole lot of memory of all the details, but we hit it off right away. And I think I started to like hint at some things, and we kind of went into my history of growing up. Anyway, she honestly, she just would give me resources. Like she had me read a book about like a trans person, and I read it, and she was like, just see like if you can relate to that, giving resources, but I would say not planting like, I don't know how to say it, keeping it open,
Okay. Okay.
not steering them a specific direction, because this is definitely a very individual journey where you really have to figure it out yourself, and having the most resources is the most important, I think.
That's a phenomenal point. So this therapist didn't say to you, Shane, we're going to put you into a box and throw the techniques at
Right.
you. This became collaboration, but you got to really kind of direct it, is what I'm hearing.
Yeah, it was very
Yeah.
open, and it was helpful that she already had some kind of knowledge about like the queer community.
Hmm.
I think it would have been a little bit different if I had gone to somebody who didn't, and I think that was helpful. So I guess doing research or having some kind of like um, whether it be various experiences or conversations with people already in the queer community who are like have had all that experience of starting out, if that makes sense.
Right, right, right.
Uh, Talking to them, getting to know what their life was like or how they started out, what were their obstacles. Therefore, you can help and assist somebody else who's already there. And I've even taken upon myself to be kind of like, um, I almost call it like a mentor to people who are starting to transition and need help with resources. That's kind of all I've ever really done for them. I don't really like,
Yeah,
don't tell them what's right or what's wrong, or you have to be a certain way to be
sure.
transgender or whatever you're identifying with, because you could be non-binary but still physically transition, whatever. That's more of a
Absolutely.
personal. Yeah. Um, so she never really like told me what to do necessarily. I think that's important to remember.
I think that's
Listen. Yeah.
absolutely. So that's one of the pieces of advice again that we can give new therapists is don't put transgender people into a box. It's
Oh, for
got to
sure.
be collaborative. Do some listening and do some research so you're not just going in completely cold.
Yeah, and I think it's important. Part of that journey for me was I went and sought out other people, like the kind of the mentors I was talking about, and they helped me find other resources or just talk to them. Because my main problem was doubt. It
Hmm.
it didn't seem real. I was struggling with doubt, and I was like, how do I know if this is real? And like, is this like a weird phase? You know, that kind of
Right.
stereotype that is phase,
Right.
or
Yep.
maybe you're
Yep.
just a masculine person. But all I can say is when you know, which is the worst thing anybody has to deal with. But like, I even have like a specific day I remember. It was almost like an epiphany, and I was like, nope, this is it. This is right. I know exactly what I want with it or how I feel about it. And but I do think it helped to talk to other people. And I've even met people who struggled with doubt for 10 years, and they still considered them, they still identified as trans, but they were still struggling with it.
Right.
It's really about your journey and confirming it for yourself and how you do that. Um, it's so varied. Everybody's so different. That's the other kind of hard part, I think, when treating people. And that's why I think it's important to be as open as possible and just provide resources, um, and so on.
You you've gotten really vulnerable tonight, and I wasn't I promise you I was not going to ask you tonight when did you know, but now that you brought that to the surface, do you?
I
Yeah.
I'm trying to think. It was, I believe it was December 17th of, um, I think it was 2018 or 2019. It was at least a year after college. Because in the beginning, I really only started off with a new name after I had figured out a name. That was pretty hard to do. And I remember my counselor, the first one I had, because I had two different ones in college to help me through the journey. But the first one, basically, just try some things out, just ease into it. You don't, there's no pressure, and you have like made sure I had like a support line and like what I needed to do for friends or family, and it was just very ease into it. I started with a name, and then I finally had to come out for pronouns, and
Right. Right.
I thinking about it, I'm just so grateful for all the people that were up there that ended up helping me. Even like all my teachers, it was really easy, and I didn't feel judged at all. It
That's
was
awesome.
pretty amazing because I didn't expect that from Ely. You will find the people that are there to support you no matter what, wherever you are in your journey. And that's pretty incredible. Um,
I think that's very incredible.
right, right. So it was like I don't even I was talking with some family members because I was still coming out to people, or I guess revealing myself, however you want to call it.
Sure. Yeah.
And I was just driving um, back home after that meeting I had like at a coffee shop, and I don't know what it was, but it was just a sudden feeling of confirmation or like that it was right. It's hard to describe. It was just like a glimmer of
Absolutely.
uh, confirmation, I guess. Yeah, um, it was pretty. It was great. It was incredible.
You know what's amazing to me about you, and I think I've probably told your folks this. You are so confident in who you are. I mean, it's amazing to me. It's like you don't even have to challenge that. And I'm wondering, did therapy work help with that, Shane, or do you think that's more just inborn?
I think it's a little bit of both. Because I definitely do think a part of it has been me working on myself. But again, I wouldn't be in I don't think I would have gotten here as fast without the support that I've had from my therapists and just my family and friends. Um, because I don't like to like completely or like never give myself enough credit because that's part of the
Yeah.
problems that I'm working on is not giving myself
Yep.
credit. But
Yep. Yep.
I
Yep.
do think the the way it happened and I think it was more efficient with all that support. Um, I mean, especially for the legal, and part of it was really the legal stuff. Like they really helped me out with that, for the insurance companies and any other mental health stuff that you needed for whatever hormone therapy, the surgeries, and other things. That was extremely helpful. And if that's the only thing somebody needs from a therapist at the time of their transition, then I think that's okay. But mine definitely helped me out emotionally as well because it was a lot to unravel in the very beginning. It was very overwhelming, and I
Absolutely.
had no idea what I was doing. So
Well,
especially when you move home first time.
it,
So
plus it's mental health. I mean, do we ever really know what we're doing? I think we try to hit the mark, but I can make a whole case that we rarely know what we think we do. Yeah,
that's fair.
I think your therapy has helped you now that you told me the story, and I think it's
Yeah,
sort of amplified who you already are. But I love that you're giving credit to so many resources too. I think that's huge.
like
That's yeah,
people are they can be your friends, and it's we're all here to help each other. So and I wish everybody thought that, but I definitely think we are like we need each other. So why
yeah.
not help each other regardless of the issue? So I'm very grateful for everyone who's ever helped me for
And I
that
and I
journey.
and I love that you're saying that. Now, Shane, I know you also interviewed some friends in preparation for what we did tonight too. What other pieces of information did you take from the friends that you talked to that we might find useful tonight?
Yeah, I'm the one I mentioned earlier is did they have any kind of training, the conferences?
Okay.
They weren't sure if they did or not. And I think about that, like even for all the therapists that I know or my therapist, I don't believe they've ever had any training conferences for it specifically. I think they've met people in the queer community, but it wasn't they didn't have an extensive knowledge.
Okay.
I know that was a big question that I had asked them. I know um, there are people who specialize in it, but again, they're in like niche areas, like maybe the cities for Minnesota, or I bet there's a decent amount on the East Coast.
Sure. Sure.
Trying to think, there was something else he said. I believe what he told me is that he also believed that it's gotten better in the community for either accepting and or helping people along with their journey. I know at some point it was stressful for him in his experience because although his therapist had previous knowledge and such, at some point um, she wasn't getting him all of the information he needed for his surgery. There was some kind of
Mm,
catch up or thing that wasn't working. Um, and he ended up having to write all of his own support letters, all of his own things, and then she
oh
just signed
boy.
it.
Okay.
So, maybe like a lack of urgency. Um,
Right.
it's
Right.
possible that some mental health professionals don't understand how important and what's the word for it? I guess serious the letters are for the insurance company.
Absolute.
The
Right.
other, because if it's not a specific way, they won't take it. They will find any way to reject it because they don't
Yeah.
want to provide it for whatever reason. I'm not an insurance agent. I don't work for one, but that was my experience. It's like any way they could do it to avoid
Yeah.
covering it, they would.
Look,
So
Shane. Since I've been in private practice and I've dealt with insurance now for 2 years,
that's
yeah, it could be a nightmare, a literal nightmare to navigate because it's all about you have to meet their criteria, which seem to be ever shifting, and so it's kind of like a moving target. I didn't even
yeah.
think about that before we met tonight, relative to transgender mental health, that the insurance companies are going to have all these requirements. And you said for you, it was about a year, I think, to get through all that.
Yeah. I it was like a huge deal once I got like the phone call and it was accepted and everything. Like I don't know if this is silly, but like I have like
Hmm.
a specific song tied to that whole journey of how I felt and how like much of a relief it was that it was going to be covered completely as well as like when I was going to do it because they're always booked months out. And you have to have a certain health criteria and sometimes wait depending on the clinician or the surgeon. And then some people have to travel out of state. Like it gets pretty intense for some people. Um, I would say that mine was even easier than a majority of people that try to get top surgery. And I do think it has changed. Like you said, it shifted because I feel the friend I was talking about and interviewed, it seemed like it was a little bit easier and it took less, not as much time, but like for the insurance part, I should
Yeah,
say
yeah.
I mean, he had to write his own letters, so that was a
Right,
little.
right, right. There is that.
That. I mean, I reviewed them and added whatever information I could, but all of my counselors and therapists, there's three of them that all wrote me letters and stuff for it. And even then, they were still kind of rejected. Like
Yeah,
it's pretty complex. I would say. I think that's the hardest part of physically transitioning.
absolutely.
Is
It's like a prior authorization process, except you got to keep doing it over and over and over again until somebody gets it right, right?
exactly. So
Yeah.
I would say that that is most of the struggle with, and then I would say part of that struggle is going to really impact your mental health. Like it feels so. I would even say like degrading, and you feel dejected about like why is this so hard to get this done? Like
Yeah.
a lot of people that want to physically transition do so because they feel they have to. At least I did. I felt that I would never find any peace or comfort with myself if I didn't get this done. Like, very close to suicidal ideation. And I knew that's very similar to a lot of my friends.
Yeah.
It's just very, very sad. So, I guess that would be another important piece to remember during all the letter writing, all the walking through the process with your client. It's extremely important to keep in check with them about that stuff, because I think that was one of the hardest parts to emotionally um, process, I would say, because it just feels like it's almost like the world's rejecting you.
Right. Right.
So why is it so hard to get this done for me? Because I can't be at peace like this. So I mean, I of course it's
I,
different for everyone, but that's kind of how I remember it.
no, I feel like you just bared your soul tonight, and I'm very grateful because, like I said, Shane, these are things that I never knew. These don't come up in conversation.
That's fair.
We
That's
have
true.
we have Thanksgiving dinner together and we hang out. You know,
I
so
don't mind
it's
talking to
yeah,
anybody.
absolutely. So it's interesting to me that as it comes out through our podcast, these are parts of you that are very vulnerable and maybe a little bit scary and very revealing, but you're trusting in the process. And I like that other people will see this, because I guarantee there are people in the midst of transitioning who are scared to death and probably close to suicide. I think the research bears that out.
Yeah.
And
Yes, for sure.
one of the words that's coming to my mind here is permission. It's almost like if we give permission to people to say, yeah, it's okay that you're doing this, where I think a lot of times it's mostly about don't do this,
That is,
again, yeah, yeah,
yeah, that's a great point.
yeah,
I think a lot of people in the community struggle with that, because if someone else is not giving, if you feel that way, in a way, it's like a reflection of you're not giving yourself permission to be that way, because
right,
it makes your life more of a struggle in the external world. And but most of the time, the real battle is within, because especially when you can't get the things you want done, if you want to physically transition, you feel like you just can't accept that part of you, and even that is just the whole journey of itself, regardless of being
right,
transgender. But for me, it went hand in hand, because after the things that I I should say the goals that I met for myself, um, revealed themselves to accepting and loving myself more. And maybe I never needed to do any of the physical things, but for me, that's just how it went and how it happened. And either way, I'm grateful for it.
Hmm.
And
Yeah, you
um,
are.
I would say family members and friends. Um, I went into it thinking, because I got to a point where it was all or nothing. I'm like, if you don't want to be a part of my life with the choices I'm going to make, then that's fine with me. Because I was like,
Hmm.
I can't live like this anymore. Like I want to live, peacefully with myself, and you are more than welcome to be a part of it. And it was very, very scary. No matter how much I felt people loved me, I was still afraid I was going to be rejected. And that includes um, my parents, my brother, some of my best friends, and just even normal acquaintances, coworkers, anyone. It didn't matter.
Right.
And for the longest time, unless I do them really well, after I got to a point of physically transitioning, I would hide it the best that I could. I didn't want anybody to know. It was because I was fearful of that rejection, and I even had incidences where people outed me without asking or telling me. And
Really?
say again?
I said, really?
Oh, yes,
People?
yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Wow.
They and I had no idea that they did that, but luckily everyone who I was working with at the time was very kind and didn't ever say anything to me, and it wasn't a problem for them, which it wouldn't matter if it was a problem for them for me. But like
Right, right, right.
it, I don't know. I was just glad because that could be very dangerous for people, and it wasn't that person's information to share.
Absolutely.
Nowadays, blatantly open. I will tell anyone,
Yeah,
like
yeah.
a stranger, it doesn't matter. It's
I
because I've gotten to the point where I love myself enough that it doesn't. It's not a big deal.
I
So
love I love that you're saying that because again the confidence just it really pours out of you and that's great to see and yeah I
yes, it
am
took
going to
a long
reflect that
time.
I get it but isn't it amazing when you get to that point that you say I
Yeah,
know myself and I can love myself and
yeah,
I want to bring up one more quick thing, Shane, that you made me think about, which is, did I
for
hear
sure.
you say that you had to be ready to let some people go if they did not support you in this?
Yes, I definitely, and I kind of have. I did have
You
some family
have.
members that didn't want to um, accept the reality of what I was doing or being, either way, whatever, however you want to call it. And I essentially I gave them a couple of like I contacted them twice and it just wasn't working out, and then I just left it at that. And even my brother ended up talking to them and was not necessarily telling them off, but like if you don't want to respect him, I don't think you should talk to him, kind of
Yeah,
thing.
right, right.
And um, and that wasn't something I asked him to do or tell him to do. That was his own thing, and I haven't heard from him since, or from that family member since. But sometimes I do think about reigniting it and trying to see where they're at now. But honestly, at that point I leave it up to the other person, and I'm always open if they want to come and talk to me. It's just it's a matter of respecting each other.
Gotcha.
I don't really want to have a relationship with somebody who's not going to respect me, and I think that's important because that can create toxicity for both people, and
Yep.
that's unhealthy. And
Well,
you don't have to have a relationship with your family members if you don't want to, or your
no,
friends, or
and I think too, Shane, tell me if I'm wrong here, but it probably puts you in a position to sort of force an image that is not who you are, I would guess.
for that person.
Correct.
Or
Yeah.
yeah, like if I had continued a relationship with them, I feel like they would project onto me what they wanted me to be, and it's like, well,
Right.
I mean, that's
Right.
more of their problem than it is mine. But yeah, it just yeah, there would be barriers. Like we wouldn't be able to be open and on the same level, I guess, if you want to
Kind of like
call
we're
it that.
being open tonight because we've been pretty
Yeah,
transparent, haven't we?
I mean, I try to be.
No, you and you do, and I give your parents a lot of credit because I
Yeah.
think they have instilled that in you. It's been just really meaningful for me to have you tonight and to use you as an educational tool, which in a sense is what I'm doing, because I like your approach to all this and I like the authenticity so much, and I knew I was going to get that, but it's turned out I got more than I thought I would get, and which means the
Well,
audience is going to get more. It is awesome,
good. I'm
and
glad.
I tell you, you are a born therapist, Shane. I mean, we all see it in you. You
A lot
know
of
that,
people.
right?
I know.
But
Maybe one day.
maybe one day. It's not my goal to put that on you. But again, Shane, thank you so much. This has been the Dark Side of Therapy. If you like the episode, please hit like. Please subscribe for more great content, and we'll see you next time. Thanks so much.